Morning, babe.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Oh, you know.
Take three, yes, I do know. My yawning's gone. That's a good part, though.
Sometimes we don't do well recording, you guys.
Yeah, some days, I don't know what it is. Sometimes mornings are a little rough. So, needless to say, we've had a little trouble getting started this morning. We might have had a little
Few dust ups.
minor dust ups just getting going this morning. And she has two coffees,
You watch what you
a
say.
Chico water, and a Diet
A
Coke,
Chico water.
whatever it is.
No,
To-
he's messing with me because I have 2 coffees and a Topo Chico, and all I want is his Diet Coke.
and I'm the one that's yawning. So we were supposed to record last night late.
Yes.
We threw the towel in on that and decided we were too tired then to do that. And so here we are now in the morning, and we're having a
Yeah.
little trouble getting going.
We've recorded 3 times, so I feel like he has told y'all that we wanted to record last night 3 times, and I'm like, babe, the people know we wanted to record. We didn't record. It's old news.
It is old news. So, babe, we ran 3 miles last night.
Yes.
I think that is maybe only about the third time in my life I've run up to 3 miles. I don't think I've ever run over 3 miles.
Yes.
And we're training for a
10K. We started this week training for a 10K in December. It's something about running a race, you just get dropped off a cliff the next day. So
Yeah.
when I ran my trail race, nothing was coming the next week or the next week. I wasn't running. My anxiety was flowing back in. I was putting a pound on a week, from not running, and my clothes weren't fitting
and
correctly.
our dogs were mad.
Our dogs were just so mad.
Yeah.
And they just kept looking at me with this horrible looks.
Yeah. So I am going to turn 50
Yeah.
2 days after we run this race. So this is a
Hubba.
10K for my 50th birthday.
Yeah. On the 21st in Dallas, we're going to run this. It's 6.2 miles, I want to say. So we have a schedule. He ran at the gym twice this week. I ran on my own twice this week, and then we ran together last night. And it was so different running with you. Well, first,
Yeah, I didn't really agree with that training plan. My first run was 2.5 miles. Why didn't I start with a mile?
Well, because it wasn't for beginners.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for
Because I'm
telling
not a
me
beginner.
that. That's a hell of a no, but go ahead.
Well, and last night I ran the lights out. I've never run that fast in my life, but I had my phone on looking for snakes because it got dark while we were running. My sister's going to hate that I said that word right just then. I'm sorry. She hates that word. But we have to say S's. My whole life I have said S's. But, and then I had Jay behind me yelling, "You better not let up." And so I felt like I was being chased by a bad person. I had so much anxiety when I was done. Actually, it was just really nice.
Yeah, but she ran her fastest split
Yes.
after that, so that's good.
No, the whole time I
Yeah.
did running with you. You made me run way faster than if I usually do. I told you guys like this little grandpa shuffle, and I ran the lights out last night. So it really does help to have someone pushing you.
I did not catch her.
He didn't even come close to it.
That's not nice to say. It was dark. How would you know? I could have had to pit stop somewhere along
Let
the
me
line.
just tell you that I got back to the lit carport, and I just kept yelling for you. Are you here? Are you here? Because our driveway kind of winds around the barn. And finally I heard from the darkness that you were. But the reason I'm joking is because, or trash talking, is because this is about to get real.
Yeah.
So I don't think I've ever beat Jay on anything. And
Don't get used to it either.
we are super, super competitive. And so it is going to be a dogfight to see who wins this race. This ain't no I'll jog with you, you jog with me type thing. This is a cutthroat death race.
Yeah, there you go.
So stay tuned to see who's winning these practice runs. And
Looking forward to it. And when we finish this one, we're going to have to come up with another one.
yeah, for sure.
gotta keep going.
We know better now not to, so
Yeah.
I'll plan something else. We'll probably start traveling with them We're going to Hawaii with one of Jay's companies in January, and I really thought I could find a race there. I thought that would be so fun, but I couldn't find one. But we
Thank
need to.
goodness, because I'd rather vacation.
I know, but you know me. I'd rather not. So, but we need to start finding some. I want to do one kind of like in the Austin area or Hill Country. We'll find one there.
Okay. So all that is going to be a little tough to keep up if it
Yeah.
stays dry and we get rolling and planting wheat. We'll just have to do what we got to do. So
Oh yeah.
on the farm, we are wet, and we got to run about a day planting wheat early on, and we're
Yeah.
hoping to run later today if it dries out enough. But they're raining the forecast, and we still got double crop beans to cut. We hadn't even got started on that, which that's a small part for us, but we still got to get them out. So
Yeah, and today is my first official day on the farm full time. So I'm
going from here forward.
I'm really, really excited. We wanted to do that the day we got married. You know, you and me, we're doing this together. And we quickly found out that someone needed to be here. So I've been trying to manage our home for the past few years, and kids and basketball and laundry and everything that goes into keeping this place here. And I think I've figured it out to where I'm ready to transition to the farm. So
Yeah, and you mentioned basketball, and we are going to
Yes.
have 5 days a week of practices and games on Saturdays and Sundays. So
Starting
we're
this week.
7 days a week starting this week, something every day,
yes,
and sometimes multiple things in a day. So we're going to be
Most
wild and
days.
crazy and trying to train for a race and get everything going too. So it's going to be a lot of back and forth.
it's going to be hilarious, but we just kind of ride the wave. But we've always said that we can't coach at the same time. That's kind of been a rule of thumb, and we just threw that rule out the window.
Well, I think at this point we got to do what we got to do, and both the little girls are fixing to transition into school ball here before
Yeah.
long, and I wanted to coach mine one more time. I've always coached
Yes.
boys, and this will be my first time ever to coach girls.
Yeah, you coached your son for how many years?
I guess 6 years.
6 years, and she's always wanted you to coach her. And so
She's afraid I'm going to be mean, so we'll see how it goes.
you are going to be mean.
I'm sure I will.
She better just get ready.
So, babe, at church yesterday, our pastor read a verse to us.
Oh, yeah, you want me to
And-
read it?
Yeah, read it, and I think it's a pretty good start to what we're talking about today.
We realize that this is kind of how, you can look at God as a father, and this is how we've kind of taken his lead on parenting our children. And parenting is something that we're going to talk about today. So it's in Matthew 11:28 through 30, and Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light."
And so you listen to that and you think about, our parenting in our blended family, and it didn't always feel really light at all,
No.
especially not at the start. And we've talked
It
about
sure
that
didn't.
before.
Yeah.
And so if you go all the way back to the start,
Yeah.
when we get married, and we got married twice, really, in the church here and then in Puerto Vallarta, something that's always confused us just a little bit.
Well, and if you wanted to officially get married out of the country, well,
Yeah.
especially in Mexico, you had to get chest scans and blood drawn, and you had to bring people with you to the wedding. We were really adamant that we just wanted it to be the two of us.
Yeah, just the basics is what we were
Right.
looking for.
So our pastor, even though we go to a gigantic church here in the Dallas area, our pastor agreed to marry us in the lobby of our church with two of our closest couples that are friends of ours. And it was so, so special. And we are just head over heels over him. And so it was just so nice for him to do it for us.
And then we go to Puerto Vallarta for our actual ceremony, and it's just us. And it was it was our second marriage for both of us, so kind of a been there, done that. And we just wanted to kind of
Strip it down.
strip it down and not do too much crazy stuff.
Yeah, our minister was from Canada. We didn't know her. She, of course, was just assigned to us when we talked to the resort about getting married there. The gazebo that we got married in, it was there's this long dock that led it out over the ocean. It was this most beautiful spot to do this.
Yeah.
The Canadian minister, she wanted to do a pouring of the sand. And you can imagine my first reaction after we've told you guys the backstory. But something in my heart just said, just get out of the way. Just get out of the way. Get over yourself for just a second. If this sweet lady wants to do a pouring of the sand, just don't stop her. Just let it happen.
And the message she had to go along with it
Yes. And so it ended up being something that we think of so fondly. And so it was, I'm so glad we allowed it to happen. But what she told us was, that we would pour the sand, and we're so competitive. So he's pouring his and I'm pouring mine. And there's a picture of us just getting so tickled because we're trying to race each other with this sand. And then she asked us if we trusted the Lord with our children. And we said, of course we do. And she said, then I want you guys to go over to the edge of the gazebo, and I want you to say a prayer to the Lord, giving your children to the Lord. And then I want you to pour your combined sand into the ocean. And we do have a really beautiful photo of the sand coming out, and one that I cherish. And that imagery stays in my head most weeks.
And we say that to say that the message that she told us that day about giving our children to the Lord and our family, the reason we bring that up today is because that's what we were talking about, going back to the start, and how that's transitioned and changed over the time.
Yes, for sure. It wasn't always clear where we were heading, and I'm sure we're going to continue to change the path that we take as we grow together. But just like with any other family, I brought my parenting style that comes from generation upon generation upon generation to the table, and then you did the same.
Well, and we've talked about it too, how our generation was raised and how it had been passed down for really strict, really hellfire and brimstone to a certain extent, and how that affected us. And
Right. I think because we do come from two homes that, attend church and strong in faith, and generations of viewing God as this angry father.
Yeah, so we were, we perceived strict parents with a really strict God.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think when we tell you guys that it took us kind of into our 30s and Jay in his 40s to really adopt and accept the concept of grace, I can see where that came from, because it was more about doing the right thing at all costs.
Right. Just always being perfect.
Yes.
And so worried about messing up that it kind of got in the way with you being somewhat of a what you always say, a whole human being.
A whole human being. And I know that comes in love. I hope that no one hears this and thinks that I judge the generations before us for feeling that way. Everyone was just doing the best we could with what we were given. And it's hard to break. It's hard to break generational.
Well, and I don't think that it's necessarily wrong.
No.
I mean, for that time and the way the world was
absolutely.
then, I don't think it's necessarily wrong at all.
Absolutely. And so I want to be clear that I don't judge that whatsoever. But in our life, I do see that from that there were mistakes that were made, and decisions that were poor decisions that were made, that I looked at them kind of as a third strike. And there was a point in my life where I took my poor decisions and I took myself out of the game, because we're all kind of raised to think that if you mess up, you're out.
Yep.
And that is in love. That is done in love, because we don't want our children to harm to come to them.
Yeah.
We want to be strict with them and scare them out of bad things. We don't want horrible things to happen in their lives because because we haven't parented them correctly.
Well, and I think then too there was a lot more societal pressure. If that's
Yeah,
the right word
maybe.
for for those kids to be
Yeah,
perfect and to do things
yeah,
exactly right. And
right.
it wasn't only just that they felt it; they were pressured from everywhere. And not that it's not that way somewhat today, but
Oh,
it's
sure.
definitely different.
Oh, sure. And I want to repeat, I know that it was so done in love. And the times that I have been absolutely strict with my kids and bullied my kids to do the right thing, it was absolutely done in love. Nobody wants to harm their children in their discipline. But I feel like as adults, we can look back and realize that it's hard to transition into forgiveness and humility and grace if it's not taught from a young age.
Well, and for us, we always say we never really knew it
Yeah,
until we were mid 40s, mid 30s,
yeah.
and we would like
Raise our children
to where
differently.
they realize it now as young children to have grace, and not
Right.
that we don't believe in discipline. We all go places that we see kids, man. I'd like to get a hold of that kid or
Yes.
whatever,
Oh,
and
gosh.
and it's different when it's your own, but at the same time, we want them to be good kids, and we want them to know that we're in charge, but we want them to realize to have grace and compassion for other people.
And I think it's where it all heads also. I mean, even though we are adults, we still have parents that we are to honor. And I can feel the shift in both of our families, a shift towards grace. And so I really do say it's more the times than it is the certain families. And so I feel like it is where we're all heading, and we're seeing that. You know that verse that I read where he says, I am humble and I'm gentle at heart. I don't think that's how we all viewed him for a really long
No,
time. And I know that it's done in love to stop our children from, you know, putting the fear of God in them about vehicles so that they don't run in the car into the road and get hit by a car. Putting the fear of God, we say putting the fear of God in them.
I was just fixing to laugh at that.
Isn't that
Yeah,
funny?
yeah,
Putting the fear of God in them about outside of marriage activities and becoming mothers in, at a young age.
right.
And putting the fear of God in them about, we're in Red Ribbon Week. And so putting the fear of God in them about drugs and how it can ruin your life. We're trying to save them
Right.
from these horrors that can happen.
Well, and it's not. We're trying to save that, but at the same time, I want them to realize to have grace for people
Yes.
they see
And that's hard.
out in the world. It is, and I
Yeah.
think you were raised like I was, where
Mm-hmm.
you truly thought that at some point lightning was going to strike and kill you.
Yes.
If you did certain things, I mean, you truly believe that.
Yes, and that didn't just come from my parents and my grandparents, and I had siblings that were much older, so I had several sets of parents in my home. That also came from our church, from the ministers in our youth group. I mean, it was kind of pounded into us,
Sure.
shape up or ship out.
Right.
And in love, I don't look at it I don't look at it negatively whatsoever. I just know that for our family, we're wanting to approach it a little bit differently. When I was in therapy, in my first marriage, I started going to therapy by myself. I was already kind of going through some things, and I remember just telling her, I just feel like he straightens everything out in my life, and I come back to him with this big ball of like audio cords, and he just shakes his head and laughs and takes it from me and straightens them all out and hands it to me, and we just do this dance over and over. Then I tangle them up, I mess my life up, I bring it back to him, he laughs, he untangles it. And I remember this lovely therapist, she goes, and she goes, oh, no, he's not laughing We serve a very angry God, and he's not laughing whatsoever. He is mad. He is very mad at what you're doing. And I just remember thinking, I don't feel that way at all. And I know we don't need to get into doctrine or anything like that, but I just choose to trust that he is loving and good and forgives us more than we could need forgiving.
Right.
And I feel like we take these principles that we've learned from here or there or TV or church or a man screaming on the corner, which kids would not know what I'm even talking about. Kids, when we would walk down the street, there would be men with signs saying that we're going to go to hell. I mean, it was hell, fire, and brimstone for the entire,
Yeah.
80s and 90s.
Sure.
And so it was an entire message that we kind of heard. And I feel like we took it into adulthood that the decisions that we made, which could be as adults, for me, gigantic, horrible decisions that carried so much weight.
As a kid, you believe there was no forgiveness for it.
There wasn't. And so as an adult, I took those as third strikes. And I feel like a lot of us take our mistakes as third strikes, and we decide to check out from life. We decide to sit down in the mud. We decide to freeze right where we are because we're not allowed to go forward. In horrible, horrible cases, we decide to end our lives because we can't take it, or we can't just even fathom that someone would find out what we did.
Sure.
And I feel like that is one of the most successful lies of the enemy, is that, no one has messed up as bad as you. Nothing you have done can be forgiven. You are absolutely the worst case scenario as far as humans go. And I feel like it's so easy to believe that lie about ourselves.
Right.
And I feel like since I was one of those people that believed it for a time, and then the curtain was pulled back, that the Lord has sent me out to tell that is a lie, and we're going to help each other uncover the truth.
Well, and at that point, you don't even know what grace is, really, and you sure have none for yourself, and you sure don't realize that the Lord has grace for you. I mean, you really have to walk through it all and go through all the hard stuff to get to the end, to even start seeing it. And so for us, trying to figure out how to pull that out, and show our kids that there is grace there.
And that can be done on the daily.
Yeah.
I know our children are so different. So where some are affected, some just take a word of direction. Some are going to take a week of punishment, a week away from their phones. It's different for all of our children. But I know with you and I, we've chosen to lead our children and to teach our children and to direct them in the way that they should go. And I want to stay so close to the Father in doing that, in blending our family. And I'm not sure where I'm going with that.
Well, I mean, you want to stay close to the Father, and you still want them to know that what the Lord is. I mean, we're not getting away from that. We're not disagreeing. We're not saying that the Lord can't be angry, because we know He can. And just like as parents, we can be angry with them. We need them to understand that although He's angry, we're angry, there's still forgiveness and there's still grace for if you screwed up, and trying to teach them that at a young age.
Right, definitely. I just think it's really hard to wrap your mind around going from being a child that is parented in a strict manner to becoming an adult that has grace for yourself. But we think it could happen. Like, I'm gonna keep them in check until they're adults.
Yeah.
And then when they're adults, they'll slough off all of the strict discipline, and they will have grace for themselves and for others. And I don't know if that transition can always occur. And in my life, it didn't.
Yeah. Well, and I think we all, see people every day that don't have as much grace for some, maybe because they haven't dealt with it as much.
Right.
Versus somebody that's been pounded in the dirt that, realizes, hey, everybody screws up, and they can look at that other person and say, boy, I feel for them. And,
Right.
and I guess what we're trying to say and figure out is we want our kids to get that without having to maybe get drug through the dirt.
A lot of times when we're disciplining our kids, we're giving them examples of how we did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I think we used to think, oh gosh, if they find out, then they're going to let their hair down and never look back.
Yeah.
And it's just not the truth. If they can find that they are normal, then they can settle in. You can kind of come unhinged when you feel like you are the worst.
No.
You're the worst. Nothing you've done, no one has messed up as bad as you. You can kind of come unhinged. And so when you do get that, even from a parent, it's like you can settle in and grow, I feel like.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. And, you kind of look at it back up and you think about that strict parenting and, fearing God striking you down for doing something. It is a way to parent without being there all the time because of that fear.
Yeah.
And the right mix of that with today's society,
Right.
and raising kids that have grace for other people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fine line, but I think if you are open with them, I mean, not 100% open, but if you let them realize that, hey, I screwed up too. I know I've had conversations with my kids about stuff that, my parents never said a word to me about this stuff, even that I screwed up in school. I got my butt busted for that one time. And you don't want to do that.
Right.
And,
for sure.
You have to kind of give up the, not necessarily a facade, but, that I was a perfect kid if you want them to be perfect, because that's just not really a teaching moment.
You really do have to.
And that was really hard for me to get past that. And that's something that I think that I got from you, is being able to say, hey, I screwed up here too, where I think early on as a parent, I was more focused on them thinking that I was a perfect human being and had always been, when, it's just not true.
If our grandmothers found out that we sometimes apologize to our children for how we parented, or went back to our children and further explained that, hey, we did that when we were little, or if our grandmothers found out how we parented our children, they would lose it. It is just so different from...
Well, and I think in a lot of ways, when something has happened, in a lot of points, we do parent just like them. I mean, we lower the boom, and then here's the hammer, and then we get to thinking about it.
And then we're like, oh, no.
Yeah, well, maybe we should have gone about that just a little bit different.
Yeah, the other day, something had happened at school, and my girls got a little nosy about it. And so I barked. I was like, said both their names, and I just said, cut it. And, just like I would have heard my mom or my grandma, or, you see on TV, just a strict way, like, butt out, and drove down the road and was like, now they're making up their own story, because I told them I wouldn't explain it to them and I wouldn't talk to them about it. So now they're making up this bunch of bull about what happened.
Yeah.
And so I had to just stop and apologize, and just be like, it isn't your business, but since you did see, this is what happened, and this is what Mom decided to do, and kind of use it as a teaching moment instead of leave a void that they were going to fill with junk.
Yeah.
and it would kind of, and carry it with them for a long time.
Well, and to me too, that's another part that of being parenting less strict. Not necessarily less strict because we're very strict parents,
It's
but
hard for us to talk about
but
this, isn't it?
it is, but having grace. But then you do get kids, and for me, it's been a little bit of struggle that
Yeah.
are a little more nosy. They feel like that they
Yes,
should be
they
on the
do.
end of everything, and so I mean that's a drawback, and thinking they're a little bit bigger than what they are. I mean, it's definitely a
Same
drawback to it.
level.
Yeah,
Same level. So it is a constant moving target. And I'm sure it sounds like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. It is really hard
that's why
for,
we're talking about. We're trying to figure it out.
yes, it is really hard for us to talk about this because we don't ever want our parents or grandparents or family members to think that we didn't enjoy the way that we were raised. We love how we were raised. I love how Jay was raised also because I have a husband that is a whole entire individual, and that came from his raising. And so, parenting our children in a different way from the way we were parented doesn't mean that that was wrong and this is right. We are just trying to follow the Lord and follow this path and realize that we weren't a blended family and now we have a blended
Yeah,
family.
we weren't raised in a blended family.
Right. And we want to speak into those of you that maybe you were raised in a traditional family and you were raised very strict. And we want to pour into your lives as parents over your blended family and show you that grace can abound. And that's the conversation we're wanting to have today.
Well, I think there's so many similarities in the way that we were raised. We do things.
You and me.
But like we said, the hard part is to pull that out and to try to for that kid to be able to maybe be a whole person at a younger age.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, we say that all the time. I told that to Lily yesterday. I was telling her, I want you to watch this Brene Brown documentary with me. And she was just so confused. She was like, who is she? What is it about? Why do you want me to? And I was like, oh, I guess this would be odd if my mom was like, I want you to watch this
No.
documentary with me on shame and what is fear.
Yeah.
And so I just had a conversation with her yesterday, and I was telling her, Mom didn't figure out a lot of stuff till way later in life. And if there's any way we can get you there younger, that's what we want to do. And so these audiobooks, I've had Bob Goff streaming through our car all week long. So my kids have heard Bob Goff all week. And these things that if these little sentences can seep through, because it's so mundane for them, they're not listening.
No.
But if these little sentences can seep through, how much better will that be for them?
I think it means a ton. Mm-hmm. And then something else
Me
that
too.
we talked about a little bit is just the difference in those kids and
Yes.
how not only are
they're
you
so
juggling the strict part of it, the grace part of it, but now each kid is different, and you have to figure out kind of how to make that work for each one.
It is.
And we know that they're all gonna find this out and figure it out
Yes.
at different points in their life. But how do you if you got one that you got to lower the boom on
You
to get a
really
point
do.
across?
Mm-hmm. It's so different. I mean, when my first one was born, my mom said, you're just going to have to look at them a certain way. You won't ever have to spank them. You won't ever have to do anything serious with them as far as discipline. You'll just have to look at them a certain way. That was not my first child. That was not how I was to discipline her. You could not, you could not get your point across to her for nothing.
Yeah.
Then when my second child came around, she was that child. She was look at a certain way and she was corrected. And so my mom was talking about my second child for sure. And that's because she's most like me. In our blended family, I don't parent your children yet. Maybe one day I will, but right now they have two parents. They don't need a third parent. Why do kids have to have a third parent? And it's not very fair. My kids don't have a third parent because their dad isn't remarried yet. And so with our blended family, since I don't parent your children, I try to get kind of creative when I do need to parent, when I do need to direct them in a different direction. And so we were talking earlier, I was having a problem with the laundry. One of them or two of them were throwing their entire wardrobes into the laundry, and I was ending up cleaning a bunch of clean clothes. And you'll get that with some girls. They'll try something on, it doesn't work, and instead of going through the work of hanging it up, which some of them don't even know how to put clothes on a hanger, they'll throw it in the laundry. So I approached the 5 of them. And so since I don't parent your children, it wasn't even from a parental tone. It was more of like a, hey, man, like, you guys, I can't be washing all of these clothes. Well, your little girl took it so to heart. I would do laundry for the next few weeks, and I would end up with these gigantic piles for each child, and not one thing in your daughter's pile. And so I was like, what is going on? And I realized that she thought she was in trouble. And so from now on, she was shoving her dirty clothes in her dresser to not be in trouble by me. And you were there, baby.
Yeah.
I didn't, I was not.
It wasn't even addressed at her, really.
Well, for sure, it wasn't addressed to her, but even if it was, I wasn't even ugly.
No.
I wasn't like, with my kids, I would have been screaming. With the 5 of them, I was like, hey, it was just normal.
No.
So anyways, I had to go back to her and be like, hey, I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag and let you know who I was talking about. And it was not you. It wasn't you at all.
No.
I just didn't want to come down on that one person. And so where you're wanting to be heavy, you'll accidentally be very heavy to some of them. And I know that it is very easy to break a spirit without meaning to.
Yeah, that's a hard line to go down there, just because they are so different. And we've got 2 that are pretty soft-hearted, that it doesn't take much direction to get them there, and then a couple of 3 others you might have to
I was
use.
going to say, I think you think that we have 2, but I think we have 3. He's just not that way with you.
Yeah.
So, because I'm wondering which 2 you're talking about, but now I know. You think that little one's feisty, but he's not.
Pretty feisty.
He is with you. He has a certain, my little guy has a certain relationship with Jay that is a hoot to watch.
It's a good one, though.
Yeah, I love it.
It is.
So, and I have 3 children, and they each 3 have very different relationships with Jay.
Yeah, it is. It's something.
It's fun.
And I look back on it, I don't even realize how it even transitioned to that. It just, I guess it's evolved into what it's supposed to be, but it's completely different.
It's because of who they are. I'm positive.
Yeah.
So.
And I think with my kids, and as far as parenting, I think now you do more that you don't realize, and they're accepting of it, so there's no issue. And I think that changes over time. But I do also think, as a step parent, when, if you're yelling at your kids or I'm yelling at my kids, the others are listening.
They're listening.
And it's just like her being worried about messing up that laundry. Now they're worried about messing with that. So indirectly, you're parenting those kids. You're just directing it at your 3 in a very loud way.
Yeah, well, I do study your children when that's happening, because I always feel so sorry for the other kids. Like, if I'm yelling at Lily on the way to school, which is a lot of mornings because she's not a morning person, so her attitude is full throttle in the mornings. I always feel sorry for Liza and Cash, that's what they had to go through on their way to school, and that's how they had to start their day. And I just feel like junk. Like, why did I put them through that instead of just waiting for time alone with Lily and doing that? I look at your children too because I discipline my kids hard in front of your kids.
Yeah.
And I realized on the farm, when one of us messes up, the whole rest of the crew is so happy that it's not us. It's like we're elated that we weren't the one. Jerry and I have talked. We weren't the one to mess up. We weren't the one to wreck the header, or we weren't the one to wreck the truck. So we're just happy. And I've studied your kids, and your kids, I can be plowing into one of my kids, and your kids will come right up and tell me something funny. And so I've studied them enough to know that it does not scare them. It's almost like they're happy they're not the one getting in trouble.
They're out of the line of fire.
And my children are the same way.
Yeah.
So I think we can relax a little bit in that and just do what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're both pretty good at lowering the boom when
Yeah.
it needs to be lowered. You're a lot more out front and doing it. I'm more, I may not lower the boom for 30 minutes after it happened when they're off by themselves. We do it in different ways.
So differently.
We really do.
And I'm sure it does sound, again, like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth because we're like, we parent in grace. Then we're like, we lower the boom. But with us, sometimes the grace comes from, we do get away from ourselves because, I've parented this way for 14 years. And just in the past few years have wanted to drench my parenting in grace and drench our family in grace. So a lot of times grace in our family looks like me getting away from myself and yelling and then having the grace to come back to talk with them and apologize. And
Well, I think that's the point of talking about it as a blended family, even if we're talking to a family that's not, is that I don't think either one of us would have changed at all if we weren't a blended family. We would have kept right on doing what we were doing. But having to deal with stepchildren and a spouse that you don't have kids with.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, we had to find it to make it work.
Yeah, for sure. And don't you think it's hard if your children feel like they're different from my children in the same space? And that's something I feel like we had, my oldest will be like, well, they're not getting in trouble, or they don't have to do this, or they're not losing their phone, or they're not having to do dishes. And I just quickly was like, I'm not their mama. Like, their mama doesn't live in this home, and they'll have to deal with their mama when she finds out what they've done.
And two, that was something that we don't have it all even, but it's something that was difference in parenting, and that over time, you and I have worked that around to where it's more even than what it was when she was making more of those comments at first, definitely.
When my older little girl.
Yes, I'm just saying, I mean, all of it as a whole, between you and I's dust-ups over this or that, we have evened that up. I realized, hey, I was not following through there. I see how that looks to her now, or vice versa.
Well, sure. And you just have to go back to reality and pray for the best, because in this home, their daddy lives. And in this home, my kid's mom lives. And we've talked about that before. A daddy is not as dialed into what they're doing. You guys are just wired completely different. But the lovely thing is, when your kids leave this home, they get to a very dialed in person. And when my kids leave this home, they get to their dad that's not, and I mean, when I say dialed in, I mean, you guys aren't wired to hear every tone or every word that they're saying or every little action that they're making. Yeah, it just
blows right by us,
sometimes it blows by you guys.
Yeah.
Not with us. We're like hawks. And so what I'm saying is, maybe they're not getting it here in this space, but there's a chance for when they go to their mom, and also when my kids leave this tight space, they're then going to their dad, who it might blow by him in that space.
Yeah.
So you don't have to try to control it, or you just trust that at some point it's going to reach a nice spot of balance. Do you know what I mean?
I do, for sure.
It doesn't. Now, my children do have a third parent in you, because you've reached this really cool space of being their stepdad in every form of the word. So that is a little bit tricky for them, I think. But I think because you do love them so much, I mean, you're crazy about them. And I think that's key. I don't think discipline needs to come from a parent that doesn't fully love the kids just yet.
No.
So if the parent is able to say, because I see it online all the time where the stepmama is saying, I can't connect with them. I haven't been able to connect with them just yet. I don't think that's a good time to start parenting.
No. And we both know that connection takes a while and takes the healing. We've mentioned it here before, and it's a fine line for all of it to come together. I think for us, we can sit back and look at nearly 3 years and watch the transition of how it has. And I know that keeps transitioning. Now we're dealing with teenagers, and it throws a wrench into it on the other end. But coming off, I would say the best weekend that we've ever had together.
It's crazy.
I mean, it gives you. I guess I'm saying it to say that there is hope, because it's such a different scenario for us now than what it was 3 years ago. And I think that grace, has a huge part of that.
Well, and we count little victories here in this home.
Yep.
And so I think a month ago, I got my first secret from one of yours that no one knew. No one on earth knew except me. And it was like I could have just run down the street stripping my clothes off. I was so stinking excited. Yeah. And then last night we were sitting in the studio, and our middle girls came in, gave us big kisses and hugs, and went to run down the stairs. And your little girl stopped at the stairs and said, stopped and goes, "Night, Jessie." And it's enough to it's good.
Yeah, your jaw hit the floor.
And you guys are like, what kind of family do y'all have if you don't even have them saying goodnight yet?
No.
They just don't. There's some things that they've held tight to their chest with me until they felt ready.
Well, and it's something, too, that at first we did try to force.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
give them
good night, good morning, and goodbye.
Yes.
And then we figured out that.
Yeah. If Jay will accidentally do it, he'll tell his kids, "Go tell her bye," and I'll just look at him like, "I'm going to kill you," because we no longer want anything in this house that's not genuine or real. And you might want it for a minute, but you won't want it when you get it. So it's something we're learning, and when it's forced, it means nothing. And so, anyways, when she turned and said night, it was just like you'd given me $1 million. No. It was just the nicest thing. And it was so little. But I think that's why God didn't, for her not to say goodnight every night that she's here and it be nothing, but for it to be 3 years of that's just not what we do. She tells you goodnight, and my little girl tells me goodnight.
Yeah. And
so for us to bring 3 years and then that little moment, it was just so special.
Yeah. Well, and some of it, it's just reminding, because, they're kids and they forget. But a moment like that, I mean, that's what it's all about. Because that was a real one right there. It was
really
for sure.
Sweet.
Yeah, it really was.
It was a neat little hug from God for sure.
Yeah. And so when thinking about all this, and you think about fixing it, and we were talking about that too, where you were working and you're talking about, how you think everything is such a wreck that you can't, and we in our lives too, that you're such a wreck that it can't be fixed.
Yes, I know. As an adult, do you mean with mistakes and stuff, or?
Well, mistakes, and you were talking about working for Joe and the things.
Yeah, I know. I was telling Jay that one of the nicest words of advice ever given to me was by my buddy Joe Cloud. He was my broker when I went into real estate for a few years. He doubled as one of our best friends. He is one of our best friends. And in real estate, you just kind of feel like any moment you could be sued because there's so many things, hoops that you have to jump through and things that you have to remember and forms that have to be signed. And as a new real estate agent, I was just tangled up in a ball of anxiety that something was going to go wrong. And he sat me down finally and was like, "Jessie, nothing, no." And he sat me down and he was like, "Jessie, anything can be fixed. Anything you can think of that goes wrong, that you do incorrectly, can be fixed.
Yeah.
And it was like this huge elephant just hopped off my chest and ran out the room like, all right, let's do this. And I feel like that's what we're trying to pass down to our children. Like, we're trying to live our lives full tilt, and in living a life full tilt, you're going to make some mistakes.
Yeah.
That's what we tell our girls at basketball with ball handling. We want you going as hard as possible, and we want that ball flying across the court, because if it's not, you're playing it safe. You're just doing the things you know how to do. We want to see the ball flying because we want to know you're going so hard that you're messing up and learning and growing. And so in our life, it's like I am a personality that I am so scared to mess up, because I'm so scared people are going to find out I messed up. I'm a rule follower, so I don't want to my core, I don't want to mess up. And when I have messed up, it's taken me out of the game.
Yeah.
It took me out of my life, my own life. I've told you guys, it sat me down in the mud. It stuck me right down in the mud, frozen, strangled, to not be able to move forward. And just like we say all the time, we want all of you to realize that no matter what you've done today, you get to move forward, because the Lord already sent his son to die on the cross. He already knew before you were born that you were going to make those mistakes. One of the healthiest things my therapist ever told me was, what happened to you is going to happen again. What you went through, it's not the last time. This is your life. You're going to make several more mistakes. And so instead of someone looking at me and going, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
Someone looking at me going, you made mistakes, and do you know that you're going to make more? And I was like, oh. I mean, it just was this new realization that, and for us, it's like, you're going to make more mistakes, and guess what? They're going to be covered too. The ones you made are covered in grace, and you're going to learn from them. The ones that you're going to make are also going to be covered in grace, and he already knows about them.
And so taking all that stuff that's happened to us, and then what you're referencing there happened to you, and applying that to our children, not only just ourselves, but our children at a younger age, for them to try to be ready for adulthood. And I think that's really what we're trying to get across today, is that all that stuff applies, and figuring out how to put it in our family and use it with our kids, and let them know that if they mess up, it's still a mess up, and people are still disappointed in you. I'm still disappointed in you, but
things cannot go this way.
Yeah. I mean, we're not saying that that's all right to do, but we're saying that it's not a life ender either.
No.
I mean, it comes around full tilt. And I don't know, just over time, I've just seen so many things happen to myself and to other people. And, whether it's a very young girl getting pregnant and the parents are so upset, and I've seen it happen. But I see those same people now, 10 years later, and, everything is fine. That kid is awesome. That girl is happy. Her parents are happy, and it all comes full circle. You just have to give it time to get there.
Everyone is just doing the absolute best job they can at wading through every single circumstance that none of us have ever gone through before.
No.
I think it's just so important to remember that no one is out to get anyone.
No.
No one is out to sabotage our children. If our children are being harmed by our parenting, it never was on purpose. We're all this is the first for us. This is the first for you and I to have 14-year-olds.
No.
We have no idea how to have 14-year-olds.
No.
We know how to have 10-year-olds because our 14-year-olds were 10.
Right.
But there's so many different little firsts that we're wading through, and I think that's why it's just so important to bring every thought captive before the Lord, every decision captive in prayer together with the Lord, the decisions that we're making in parenting. But we all have emotions and we all fly off the handle all the time. And
Yeah.
there's grace for that as parents. And I think there's just a neat space that we can all get to, but it's going to take practice and training.
Well, and I think our 14-year-olds are pushing us to that because there's
Yeah.
getting to be more about the social schedule. And can I go here, go there?
Yeah.
And they're out away from us a
Yes.
lot more than they were. And for us, that's what's got us to this point of talking about it because it's something that we're dealing with. I don't necessarily say on the daily, but for sure on Friday and Saturday because it's a constant,
Yeah.
can I go do this or can I go do that type of
for
deal.
sure.
And so it's really forced us into rethinking some of these things about how we were raised and how to handle it and how to send them out in the world to deal with it.
And I think we'll keep doing, it'll be a moving target with this for sure.
Right.
But
So, babe, earlier you mentioned Netflix, and we started
yeah.
watching a show, and I haven't seen the episode yet, but it's one you want me to see and that you were really excited about.
I wanted to pass it on to all of you guys, but there's a show called Modern Love. I want to say that Tina Fey is one of the producers, but I'm not sure. I should have looked. But if not, she's in one of the episodes, and it's not on Netflix. It's on Amazon Prime. So you guys are going to have to get Amazon Prime. But there is an episode, Modern Family, episode 3 is with Anne Hathaway. I forget what the episode is called, but if you yourself, this is going to involve everyone, if you yourself are battling any type of mental anything, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, mood swings, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, this is an episode for you. If you are someone married to someone that I described, this episode is for you. If you have wondered why you don't have compassion for people that are struggling with this episode is for you. If you're a parent of someone, the list goes on and on and on. This is an important episode. And it's beautiful. It beautifully depicts the life of a woman with bipolar disorder as she tries to navigate friendships, love relationships, and her work environment. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I was so proud of whoever created it because it is going to pull back the curtain on some things that we're needing to see. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but there is this one part because I think initially all of us are kind of like, they need to suck it up. They need to suck it up and snap out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that we think that we can bully each other out of our emotions and our imbalances.
And I think that goes back to some of that older mentality too.
It does because we say walk it off.
Yeah.
From our great-grandparents, we've been taught to walk it off. We're still that way with our children.
Sure.
In a lot of aspects, especially sports injuries. But going back, there's this one part that is just so wonderful. I can't wait for each of you to see it. But, she's bipolar, so she's gone through several days of wonderful and now several days of horrible and in bed. And she's made it back around to where she's into top of the world feeling. And she's in this beautiful dress and beautiful makeup and hair. And she goes to turn around to answer the door because her date's there. And she's so excited. And all of a sudden, it comes on her. And she's like, no, please no. No, please no. And it sits her down on the potty. And she's like, come on. I mean, she is wrestling and she's struggling, trying to talk to herself. And she's like, you can do this. Come on. And she goes to stand up and it takes her to the floor. And she just goes down into a fetal. And this beautiful fella picking her up for a date, he thinks he stood up. He thinks, she doesn't like him. And here she is, beautiful in this beautiful dress on the floor, crippled.
Yeah.
And I think it is really important for everyone to see it so that you guys can know that we're not choosing these feelings. Any of us that are dealing with any type of anxiety or panic or anxiety attacks or depression, any of the things that I listed, I think it is really helpful for us to see it on the screen.
Yeah.
So that we can have some grace for each other and some compassion for each other. There's a woman at the end of the episode that befriends the girl, and you'll be cheering for her.
Yeah.
You'll be so happy that she came along. And so I just wanted to make sure that we told about that episode, but it's called Modern Love. It's a new show.
And I think, from my standpoint, even, and probably a lot of men, is that it's real, that it really does happen. And because I know from, growing up that way, it was a lot of walk it off and suck it up and do that. And
or she's just trying to get attention.
Yeah,
Or he's just trying to, or he's been raised soft, so he's trying to get attention. I don't think that you were ever ready. I know that you were not ever ready to witness mine because I wasn't ready to have mine.
Yeah.
And so I think it is a 1-2 punch when they occur because both of us are just in absolute shock when they're happening. But I'm just so thankful that you are there and that you don't leave.
Right.
And I'm thankful that there is help and that in our life, help has come in the form of physical activity. We've said that before, that physical activity can be as potent as our strongest psychiatric medication. That is true in my life.
Right.
That might not be true in someone else's life, but there is, just like medicine for a sinus infection, there is medicine for some chemical imbalances that happen in the brain. And so we want to take the stigma away from that for our friends and for our family and listeners to know that if you are dealing with these things, to reach out to someone for help as soon as you can.
Well, and for us, we've dealt with it enough. We know that physical activity is important for you, that if you're not running, if you're not working out, then it does create a problem.
Right. They say when someone shows you who they are, believe them. I felt that this week. When God shows you the answer, believe him.
No.
Because after the trail run, I just was not in the mood to run and I couldn't get back into it. Something flipped in me emotionally and I just couldn't find my love for it for a few weeks. And the anxiety flowed back in. I was having anxiety attacks. I was short with Jay. I just was irritable and could not find myself. And I felt like God was saying, and because I was still searching, like, what do you think's wrong? Or and I already knew the answer, but you reset. You're like, do you think I should go to a therapist? And it's like, once he shows you the answer, believe him, believe the answer, and let's keep it going. And so we've implemented it back this week and coming out of the water a little bit.
And so now I get to run 10K.
Yeah, are you excited?
I am excited.
I am too.
I've never done anything, and I'm going to wait till I'm 50 years old to do it. But it'll be my first race I've ever run, I guess.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to tell you, once you pass 6 or 7, it doesn't really matter the mileage anymore.
Didn't feel like that yesterday at 3.
Well, you're at 3.
But we're going to run 2 later this week. I'm going to smoke you all. I'm telling
What do you mean later this week? We're doing that like today.
Oh, I didn't know when, but.
It's like today or tomorrow.
Okay. You're getting beat, all I'm telling you.
All right.
Babe, what else you got?
I don't think anything.
All right. Well, as the song says, the road goes on forever, and the party never ends.
I do have something.
No, she's got something. Party's not over. Go ahead.
I want.
Why did you let me finish that?
Because I didn't want to interrupt
Oh,
you.
okay.
I didn't want to interrupt.
I guess that's why I ran out of gas at the
Babe,
end, because I knew it wasn't over.
I had my mouth open
Okay, go
the
ahead.
whole time.
Sorry.
I wanted to say that there might be some holiday time at the end of the year where we don't release an episode. So I just wanted to tell everyone that that might happen this end of the season.
Okay.
But can you believe we've been recording for 11 months?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I just cannot even believe it.
I can't either.
But our episodes can be pretty expensive to produce, and so we need to borrow an episode for Christmas presents.
One way to look at it.
But we love you guys so much, and now you do your thing, babe.
What else you got?
Nothing.
Are you done?
I'm so done.
All right. As the song says, the road goes on forever and the party never ends.
Let's go to work.
All right. Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye-bye.